large portion of your damage. This is going to group enemies together, and they're going to be vulnerable, and they're going to be stunned. It's a very effective tool for the Necromancer. As you see, we have all these extra damage points here. We come back to this later. We're just going over the bare bones. Corpse Tendrils is the most important. Then we're going to come down here, and we are going to, honestly, this is all secondary stuff. So we want to get down here eventually, but this is probably going to be around level 30 plus. Maybe a little earlier, but this isn't too important. Once we get to the point where we've spent enough points for the key passive to unlock, we do want to get the Shadow Blight key passive, because there are so many aspects that interact with the Shadow Blight key passive, and we are going to be doing basically nothing but dot damage from here on out. Shadow damage, damage over time, those are the mods that we're looking for. So there's the core set skills. We have Corpse Explosion, we have our Blood Mist, we have our Reap on our basic attack, and we have our Corpse Tendrils. So what basically happens at this point is we need the Brutal Hearts, which are not brutal, but the hearts that are going to come on early line. This is one of the most common hearts. When at least X amount of enemies are near you, you automatically cast an aura that decrepifies them for 15 seconds, and then you're going to get another one that gives you well, not this one. This is a little niche, so we'll come back to that. But this other one here, walking near a corpse automatically activates the equipped corpse skill every second, dealing X amount of damage, dealing X amount of reduced damage. So this does put our corpse explosion down a little bit, but these are the only two required for the build, and I would say that the Brutal Heart and the Vicious Heart are probably the easiest to come by for this build, for sure. You might not get a Brutal Heart that says with at least one enemy near you. I think I've only had 2 in my playthrough to level 75, this being the second one. So you'll have some that say like with 2 enemies nearby or with 3 enemies nearby. And the thing that you need to realize about that is it single target viable or not? And I'll tell you right now, hitting the boss up on the end of some Nightmare Dungeons, it might feel like it's not really that impactful. When you get the one that says with 1 enemy near you, that's the one you want, because that will basically negate all the problems that you had before with single target and boss encounters, because you're always going to have your Decrepify aura up, and then you're also going to utilize the Iron Maiden aura, because we get an aspect that increases our damage when they're affected by both. So we are a curse setup, we are a corpse explosion setup, we are an Autobomber because of the Vicious Heart that we're running. But not only that, but because of the Blood Mist setup that we're doing. So I'm just going to go ahead and hop into this to explain the playstyle. This was something that we did in the beta. Blood Mist triggers a corpse explosion on surrounding corpses. When Blood Mist detonates a corpse, its cooldown is reduced by 0.4 seconds. This is the highest one I've seen. I have a couple other aspects that are 0.3s, but 0.4 just so happens to be the highest that I've seen, which is really important because we want to reduce the cooldowns as much as possible, because we're not using any core skills. We are simply utilizing cooldown skills this entire build. This is a damage over time cooldown based build. We do not utilize any corpse skills at all. Just as an example, let me go over this real fast. Okay, hold on. Basically, as an example, our blood mist is going to spawn corpses on the ground, and as you see, the corpse tendrils, there'll be a blight. You saw one minion run off. That's honestly due to the gauntlets that we're wearing. Instead of detonating immediately, corpse explosion summons a volatile skeleton that charges at a random enemy and explodes, and then you get X amount of damage from the explosion. So that's why it didn't really, because if I were to do this without the gauntlets on, they wouldn't be running out. So let's just take a look at what that looks like. Oh yeah, hold on a second. What did that even do? Hold on, wait. Let's just put a random pair of gloves on, I guess. We'll do that. So if I weren't to have the gloves on, you're just going to have the explosions at your base. And honestly, that is how I've been running it for the longest. I never really had it set up with the auto seekers. Now, I'm on the fence whether I think that this is more effective DPS, but like with a large mobs on the screen, I think this is best in slot. Basically, the 40% increased damage is best in slot, but it's hard to really say though, because I like my damage being isolated on where I'm at for this playstyle. Because we're popping our Bone Storm, we're popping our Corpse Explosion, and we want everything to be isolated in this area. Do you see this area I'm circling? Because we can group enemies into this area. We don't want our damage to be scattered. But it's kind of hard to say, because the Corpse Explosion and Volatile Skeletons are really good at their job. They really do heat seek, and it just makes for more of a quality of life, I guess, for what I'm trying to say. But basically, the playstyle is Blood Mist is going to be spawning our corpses more often, and the gauntlets are going to be causing them to heat seek. But in the thick of the moment, the higher the nightmare tier, it's probably going to feel a lot better. Mist aspect that automatically detonates the corpses when your blood mist is over it or nearby, and then combined with the heart. So while we're passively right there at the bottom, if you read there, while we're passively just around corpses, they're going to detonate every second. So the Vicious Heart in tandem with the Blood Mist aspect are going to give us a lot of auto detonations, which is what you saw on the preview early on. That's what really makes this build solid. So what are we doing exactly? We are simply just scaling that. That is our main source of damage. So everything we need to do needs to generate corpses, hence the skill tree. We already went over the major portions of the skill tree and how we create corpses. Hewed flesh is probably one of the largest aspects of it, because we get to create a corpse on lucky hit, and we want to hit frequently. The other aspect of this is going to be the heart that I'm running that gets the auto decrepify curse. Now, as far as I know, if you have the 3-point spec into decrepify for abhorrent decrepify, you are getting those benefits. And I will tell you right now, firsthand, just playing the build, you do get this benefit. This is how we're able to keep our cooldowns so low all the time. And then this is where I get into the point of why we're using Bone Storm. But enemies hit while affected by Decrepify have a 15% chance to reduce your active cooldowns by 1 second. So what ticks a lot and what gets us a lot of hits is going to be Bone Storm. And the reason why we use Bone Storm is because of how frequently it ticks. So it's going to reset the Decrepify. It's going to give us more cooldowns for our Blood Mist, which is what we want. And then enables us to sacrifice all of our minions for the bonuses. So the Skeletal Warriors will be sacrificed for more shadow damage. The Skeletal Mages will be sacrificed for more damage to vulnerable enemies, which we do based off of our tendrils. And then the Golems will just basically give us increased max life. So it's not too glamorous, but it is what it is. And then that's basically the core setup. And then the biggest reason we also want to use Bone Storm is because we do get the aspect for Bone Storm being a darkness skill. Now, with darkness skills constantly proccing, that's also going to go in tandem with our oh man, I can't remember what it was. What was it? Oh yes, our key passive, Shadow Blight. So every 10th time an enemy receives shadow damage from you or one of your minions, they are affected by Shadow Blight. They take an additional whatever it is. This says 1975 shadow damage. So we want that tick to happen as much as possible. So Bone Storm just so happens to be the most, I mean, this is probably the part of the build that could be replaced. You could go minions, you could go golem, you could put another thing onto the build to make it better, but Bone Storm just so happens to tick so well. It has so many attacks, and then it does reset the Shadow Blight passive, and it enables us to do a lot of damage. This is basically what enables us to tear down those elites and really trash those big packs. Bone Storm in tandem with Blood Mist just seem to go hand in hand. And then for the rest of the skill tree for this build, and I'm not going to go into too much detail, but it's a lot of the shadow passives here. Obviously, I take all three of everything. We want stuns. I would say the most priority would be 1, 1, 3, 3, 2, and then maybe 3 here. Like, you don't even need this top one, but it's like if I'm running golem or minions, I'll unspec all these and just get the bottom row. Same with the amplified damage, same with the Death's Embrace. These are all gear selected. I don't spec into Iron Maiden because I don't need to. You get Iron Maiden on the helmet, and that enables you to have your double curse setup. And we will go over that in the gear section right about now. But the only other things that we're doing that aren't active skilled is going to be Fueled by Death. Obviously, item contribution 1. We don't need regen. We don't need that at all. We don't use any spenders. We use all cooldowns and everything else. Blood Mist is priority. If you can get Blood Mist to higher level, Godspeed. I've been wanting a Blood Mist amulet for the longest. So, believe me, that's your main thing. And obviously, Reap is just quality of life. The ability to spawn a corpse so fast and have your heart... where is it at? Sorry, the heart that gives you the corpses automatically activate equipped corpse skills. This basically Reap will cause a corpse tendril early on, and it is just a really nice quality of life for you to start the rotation, i.e. start the whole skill setup. So let's go over our gear real quick. Mandatory aspects. Blood Mist triggers corpse explosion on corpses When Blood Mist detonates a corpse, its cooldown is reduced by 0.4 seconds. This is probably the best quality of life, not needed for the build to function at all whatsoever. The only thing that's really needed is the heart, which is very common. Once you have the heart that allows your corpses to detonate every second, you can run a very early version of this build, and you don't need any of these aspects really at all. I league started this. I got that early on, and you could check back in my video description, but I got that early on, and it basically just set me up. The heart itself carries you. However, this is going to be your most sought after aspect. It's a little bit, I don't know, I struggled to get it a little bit, but this is definitely going to be the best. Moving on to the chest. This one was a new one I just put on. I wanted to see how it felt with the barrier. This is definitely modifiable. This is not necessary at all. Each time a bone storm damages an enemy, you get a barrier equal to 2% of your base life. And then I get a little bit of regen while I have a barrier. So I don't know, I was just playing around with it defensively to see how it is. I was running the stunned one. When I'm surrounded by 5 or 7 enemies or whatever it was, I stun them automatically for 2 seconds, and it can only happen every 20 seconds. That's probably better than this. I like it a little bit better, but I just wanted to see how the barrier generation felt. So this is nothing to scoff at, but it's really nothing to look at. So take it with how you will. And all my gems aren't updated, obviously. I'm still working on that. I didn't know you could go up to like past flawless, but anyway. And then how from below is obviously going to be the best in the slot for the corpse explosion, summoning the heat seekers, and they do 40% increased damage. Super nice. You get 13. You get critical strike. You get lucky hit chance. You get corpse skill attack speed. 16 whatever chance to stun, and then chance to fear. It is what it is. But the damage dealt with the corpse explode, being what we're doing, is too valuable to pass up. On the legs, we are taking the armor stack. I don't know. There's probably better in slot, but just thinking from the Tinky aspect, we're gonna get the buffs here soon. This is pre-111 patch, and we're about to get some quality of life here on August 8th. But anyone watching this, especially if it's after August 8th, just know that this is pre-111 nerf. So, armor stack pants. Whatever you want on there, man. Whatever you want, really. You see the mods, you see what we're doing. And then for the boots, I chose to go with the 20% increased movement speed while moving away from slowed or chilled enemies, which I do constantly, so it's giving me a lot of movement speed. Black River is probably going to be the best in slot for the weapon. This is a terrible item power weapon, but 128% increased damage with a 24% larger radius for my corpse explosion. It's too good to pass up, so we're going to go with it. Alright, now you have to see this terrible, shitty amulet from God. I've been running with this amulet since day 1 of season 1. This is I just can't get out of it. I can't get an amulet close to anything that's better than this. And honestly, this is the bane of my existence, is my amulet right now. Everything seems to be buffed up but this. But the increased damage for 6 seconds after the Shadow Blight Key passive damages 10 enemies is very solid, because all we do is AoE. So that's proccing quite often. Now we have here another semi-mandatory aspect. Blood Mist leaves a trail that lasts for 4 seconds and deals X amount of damage. Shadow damage per second to enemies who stand in it. Your movement speed is no longer reduced while Blood Mist is active. This is an extreme quality of life, and it doesn't give you much extra damage, not in the slightest, but quality of life is definitely a must-have. You want to seek this one out, and you want to seek this one out. Blood Mist triggers Corpse Explosion. Blood Mist leaves a trail that lasts for 4 seconds. Those are the key words you want to see. Blood Mist is our baby. That's what we're doing. Moving right along. You deal 50% increased shadow damage to enemies affected by both Decrepify and Iron Maiden, which is basically why we're using dual skills. I don't have to cast Decrepify. It's always on because of the, where is it at? Yes, Brutal Heart. When at least one enemy is near you, you gain an aura that automatically curses enemies with Decrepify. So, we want to be able to have this aspect that gives us 50% increased damage, and I think they go up a lot higher. This is just the imprint from the codex, so this could be a lot higher, I'm sure. But this is just giving me a flat percentage increase to enemies affected by both of my curses. So the only one I have to manually curse is Iron Maiden, and I achieve that through the helmet. I don't have to spec any points into it because the helmet rolls Iron Maiden. So just get yourself a good helmet with some good stats on it, crowd control duration, cooldown reduction, and then Iron Maiden. That's all you're really looking for on a helmet, and that's 3 out of 4, so you should be able to find that pretty easily. And then here we have the only optional skill, I would say. Bone Storm is now a darkness skill, and it deals shadow damage and gains additional effects. So enemies damaged by Bone Storm take 983 shadow damage over 2 seconds. We're really not concerned with the amount of shadow damage based on what I was saying earlier about the Shadow Blight key passive. We just wanted to proc this, and Bone Storm hits very frequently and it procs things very frequently. So the idea is large, big old packs. If you're running up to a big old pack, you see like 2 elites, and then there's a corrupted chest and everything ready to go. Pop your Bone Storm, hit your Blood Mist, get all that extra damage going. Your barber's gonna pop them all and delete them, and then you're just gonna like reset and rotate, and you're gonna feel how that is really nice, and how all of those ticks are taking down your cooldown from your Blood Mist because of the way your Decrepify is set up. Your Decrepify is going to lower your cooldowns. Your Blood Mist is going to reduce its own cooldowns based off the aspect that we got. And then your Bone Storm is going to be constantly proccing the Shadow Blight, and we're constantly going to be doing damage over time. And let's take a look at the Paragon. Early on, this is how it's going to look. This is how I did it. It can vary for sure. But basically, we went with Gravekeeper first stat. We wanted to boost up the rare nodes, and we're going to get it all the way leveled up. But the rare nodes are nothing to scoff at. So we have Knowledge, which increases flat damage and gives you a flat amount of intelligence. And then another flat amount of damage if the requirements are met. And then later on, I kind of went to this way later, the Preservation node. This was probably around 5 levels ago I spec'd into this. So I didn't really spec into this early on. This was a little bit later. You know, I just wanted a little bit more survivability going into World Tier 4. And that's why I spec'd into Preservation. But then we're going to go ahead and select the next Paragon board, the one that has Wither. We want to get Wither early as possible. Now this is going to change in the upcoming patch, I heard. But Wither is going to get a much needed buff. I think it's fine the way it is now. I'm not having any problems at all. Maybe if I push it into higher content I might, but Wither just seems to be pretty strong. Your shadow damage over time effects have a 5% chance to deal 50% bonus damage each time they deal damage. This chance is increased by 1%, and bonus damage is increased by 2.5% for every 50 willpower you have. So you want to stack willpower, and just so happens that everything you do stacks willpower. Now we're going to want to get Dragging Shadows. We're going to want to get the Lingering Shadows. As you see, we're just trying to take the path of least resistance to as much damage as possible till we get to the next glyph socket, and that's going to be our Scourge. This is for every 5 willpower purchased within range, you deal 7.9. We're going to max that out, and we're going to grab every bit of willpower we see. As you can see, not only is it 5 willpower, but it's 7.9 shadow damage over time. That's not only going to buff Wither, but it's going to give us more damage over time. That's the name of the game. Shadow damage over time, damage over time. I'll go over this real quick. Malediction. 20% shadow damage over time. Or, no, sorry. 20% shadow damage, and then another 10 shadow damage if requirements are met. These little nodes along the way, these rare nodes, these are very valuable to get, for sure. I mean, that's basically all you're getting along the way. The second Paragon board, we're going to go with Flesh Eater, whatever it's called for Flesh Eater. Consuming 5 corpses grants 40% increased damage for 6 seconds. And then we're going to grab everything along the way, and we're going to get to the next glyph socket as soon as possible for Darkness. That's going to give us the flat shadow damage over time per willpower spent in the radius. So as you see, there's a theme going on here. We're speccing willpower, we're putting glyph sockets in with more willpower nodes, and then we're going to head on up to the next... Hold on, wait, did I miss one? Beginning, shadow damage over time, shadow damage, and then we're getting up to the new one. So yes, you're right, okay. So we haven't really gotten that far yet, but this is going to be our last Paragon board. And honestly, this one's a little bit more lackluster. I don't scoff at Scent of Death, but the way I feel on my damage and my abilities right now in nightmare dungeons that are 10 levels above me, I really don't feel like I'm being challenged at all, and I am just breezing through the content. So this is the last choice and the only choice at this point for more of what we need. So I'm probably going to go for Scent of Death, obviously. I will get Ruin. Damage to Healthy seems alright. Damage to Injured seems alright. And then maybe another glyph socket. And then that's it. That's level 100. So that's the build. That's kind of what we have here. Just so we are aware, we are not really doing anything with crit. We do a little bit of vulnerable damage, but we really don't rely on it. We just like to have things vulnerable, sure. We don't scale vulnerable damage. We are straight up shadow damage, damage over time, damage to close, damage over time, damage to affected by shadow damage over time is good. Things along that nature. This is a pure dot build. This is a pure minion build. So run with that however you want to run with it. This has been Cheddarriz from Cheddarriz Gaming. I'm going to try to include a lot more comprehensive build guides for the casual audience and for players who decide to ride with me. I'm just putting out stuff to put out stuff at this point. A lot of work gonna get done to the channel here soon, so I appreciate anybody who's rocking with me, anyone who's, you know, sticking around this far and wanting to know what I do. More content's coming your way for sure, but for everybody out there in Sanctuary, I want to say peace out, and I hope you enjoy this build. have some good times, and I'll see you on the next one.